Daphne, it's absolutely wonderful to see you again and to be back here at Thatch and Barrel where we had dinner 2 years ago. Thank you for introducing me to this place. It's just absolutely, it's super special. Can you tell us why Pedro, where we are, is a special place in the Cayman Islands?
Absolutely. Where we're seated here today is a really historic location in the Cayman Islands. It's known as the birthplace of democracy, and I think it's really special for me because this location is such a big part of Cayman heritage. I've been living here for the past 5 years, and obviously, as you know, I'm very much a proponent and an advocate for locally grown foods.
Well, we've eaten here. The food is amazing, and I just think what a wonderful, appropriate spot to get the chance to just learn a bit more about your career and how you started. So we've now been friends for over 5 years, introduced by the wonderful James Elsmore, both part of the Island Innovation family. And I've just watched your career with awe, loving everything that you've been doing. And it's also really, I guess, special and connects with me and resonates because I moved from being a lawyer to a marketing professional. You started out in a very different career. Can you tell us how you went from doing finance to being a senior contributor for Forbes?
Yes, sure. So I think you're absolutely right. You and I are kindred spirits. Yeah, I mean, like
we said it.
Yeah, we're both creatives and started off in very traditional corporate career paths that we weren't fully able to express ourselves. So I think for me, I've always been a creative, even as a little girl. When I used to play with my dolls were always journalists, and I was very much a proponent of creative solutions to bring about change. I studied international economics, so I have a master's in international economics and immediately started working in banking and finance, and then went on to venture capital. And while I learned so much, I was never home. I felt like something was missing.
I always felt like I was a square peg in a round hole.
Absolutely.
And as much as you say, it's wonderful, these careers are wonderful if you're really embedded and you're loving it, but if you're not, it's a nightmare. And I used to hate every Sunday night because I was thinking, I really don't belong here.
Yes.
Whereas now I just can't stop working, and I think it's the same for you. When you're in your chosen, when you find your calling and your passion, it doesn't feel like work anymore.
Absolutely. And you can say that a million times. Like, you just hit the nail on the head. For me, what I was doing, and I feel like oftentimes your purpose finds you, which I think happened to both of us. So that's what happened. My purpose found me. I was working in the finance sector, and I had this constant itch to write. And I love to write about the environment. And I was doing it for free as a sort of side activity. And it was getting taken up by publications throughout the region and some global publications, and no one was paying me for it, but people were seeing it. And that resulted in a program manager from the Food and Agriculture Organization who had seen some of my work around climate that I was doing in my spare time, reaching out to me and saying, would you like to manage communications for a climate change and fisheries project that we're doing? Which was the beginning of the rest of my life, basically. When I was at Food and Agriculture Organization, I was doing a lot of writing for publications around food and climate. And again, another case of somebody seeing my work. An editor in the food group reached out to me saying that he had seen my work. He had seen my work via LinkedIn, I think.
Just power of social media.
Yes, and I think just the algorithm worked for us because he was also a graduate of Columbia, and so we weren't even connected on LinkedIn. He just saw my stuff, and he asked me if I wanted to come and write for the food group, which I was thrilled and excited. Started writing for Forbes, and within a year I was asked to be a senior contributor, which was based on success of output, which actually was quite an achievement because I was focusing very heavily on Caribbean topics, which usually don't get a platform. So that was a huge achievement for me.
Congratulations for that and for putting the spotlight on the region. And I think this concept of him finding you, and you know, people ask me, how did you transition? How did you move from lawyer to what I do now? And I think there is this, there's a quote which says sort of, you know, you follow your passion, the doors will open, or something that,
Yeah,
the
or do
universe.
what you love, the money will follow.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, but if you really do try to follow your calling, these opportunities do seem to come your way. And it sounds a little bit kind of magical, but I found that and you found that. And I think that's what I always say to people, just do try to be really, do follow your bliss, follow your calling.
Be authentic.
And the authenticity is also, I think, why you're probably so successful in what you do, because you are coming from the heart with what you talk about. And we've talked before about identity and the connection between identity and food. Could you maybe explain a little bit about what does that mean, and coming from the Caribbean, what does that mean to you?
Sure. Obviously, in the Caribbean, a very big part of our culture is driven by the foods we eat. And something really beautiful about that is that we are really a crossroads for the world historically. So you'll find, our like colonial heritage comes into it, whether it's the UK or Spain or France, and then you have the African side of things. And then, of course, we have foods that come from our original Amerindian populations. And it's this beautiful, rich, delicious food that brings us all together. And then, of course, there's the environmental side of it, grown in our beautiful Caribbean soils, flavored by the seawater. Food is such an important part of our heritage and who we are, yet around 80% of the food that we consume actually comes from abroad.
So your comment about identity is really interesting, and how food is super connected to our identities and our heritage. Do you feel that by eating food that is grown locally, there is a sense of forging a stronger connection to a community, or is it more just this concept that we're contributing to carbon footprint and we shouldn't be importing, exporting in this way? I mean, there is this kind of 70-30 rule, because obviously it's wonderful to try foods that you wouldn't normally get the chance to, but what is this connection to heritage and identity that you feel is really important that we've maybe lost over the years?
It's actually a really amazing point that you make. And the fact is, we're not actually eating food from other cultures. We're eating ultra-processed foods that are mass market, created to be cheaper and in bulk, usually robbed of nutritional content because they're grown in industrial farming settings, which obviously is, you have your economies of scale, so it comes out cheaper for us in the region, but at what cost? The food that we grow here is not grown under mass industrial farming methods. It's grown on small farms with farmers that are making a living off of the land, basically.
And it is special and it is different, and you can taste the difference. I mean, absolutely. And I think that goes without saying When you buy organic, where I'm from in the UK, absolutely the difference in the taste and how you feel afterwards. Going back to how you started, and thinking a little bit more about sort of something that we're both passionate about, storytelling. And you're looking at a very serious topic, but your way of talking about it, sort of shining the spotlight, has been through storytelling, through journalism. Climate crisis is really a communications issue now, and it's how are we going to communicate the message. So do you feel more than ever that your role as a journalist, as a storyteller, has taken on another sort of perspective? And why is it so important to convey these messages in this sort of medium? And what are your sort of thoughts about how people could be doing it better generally?
Storytelling is what creates change. It brings science into layman's terms. It helps people to connect with other human beings. And my style of storytelling is basically to take human stories, to form connections with people who are living certain experiences and telling their stories, and then translating it into larger issues. And by doing that, you can educate masses of people around really complex problems.
Because they're seeing real life examples, so it's more
Absolutely.
tangible than just explaining it. That's why because one of the things that I've loved watching you on social media, traveling the world, you really get really sort of, you're there in the sort of heart of it. You're not just sitting there behind your computer typing away. You're there with the people, learning their stories. And I think that's what makes it so special, because it is so authentic. And for you, there's a real focus on the global south and the Caribbean. Those are the areas that you want to put the focus on, close to home. And we're seeing this all the time, how much of our food has been mass processed, and the amount of pesticides have been, and they didn't have to be done like that, or the fact that the land has just been over-farmed. We have something at the moment called No Mow May, which is saying, please don't, keep your land, keep your gardens natural, let them grow, give them that opportunity to kind of regenerate themselves. And so it's just, some of this seems to me such common sense, but over the years, somehow common sense was lost in, I don't know, in the pursuit of what, really?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point that you make. And as you said, there's been this drift away from traditional farming methods where our soil is degenerating before our eyes. And that's not just the Caribbean, that's not just the Pacific, that's in the UK as well, and the United States, and developed countries and developing countries around the world. We do share a common humanity and common issues, and absolutely. So you're right that most of my storytelling has been set in the global south, but that doesn't mean that the stories are that different.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time, and I would love to just find out a little bit about your experience at COP. We were both in Dubai for COP28. We didn't manage to meet. It was an absolutely hectic week, 2 weeks. What was your sort of takeaway from there, and what are you thinking as we have COP29 on the sort of horizon?
Oh, there were a lot of takeaways for me. For me, being a food and climate writer, someone who operates at the nexus of those two areas, it was really monumental for us in this field, because it was the first time that food actually was a formal part of the agenda, where there were declarations that were set out specifically relating to food, and countries were coming together, making decisions and making commitments that were around food. In terms of the global stock take, there was references to food going forward. It was huge because, of course, food, as you know, contributes to 1/3 of carbon emissions. And so really wonder why it hasn't been more formalized on prior COP agendas, but it's so amazing that it was. That was massive for me. It was also wonderful that the needs of climate vulnerable countries were highly acknowledged more than ever before. And the issue of climate finance and loss and damage was massive, and obviously that pertains to making up for prior injustices as it speaks to climate, because of course the global south has taken the brunt of the impacts of climate change, and loss and damage speaks to making up for that.
And do you think that was very much because it was the UAE presidency that they felt that, because every presidency has its own perspective, but did you feel that they really did try to look at those areas which hadn't been looked at before? And also I think I saw you were a judge on one of the prizes. Was that also during COP?
So the Zayed Sustainability Prize is actually a sustainability competition of the United Arab Emirates. I've been a judge for that for 5 years now. This year was special because I'm actually in the United Arab Emirates every single year, but this year I got to be there not only as a judge for the Zayed Prize, but also as a delegate at COP, which was absolutely amazing.
No, it was incredible. It was my first COP, and I found it absolutely incredible 2 weeks. I learned a lot. I met a lot of amazing people, and I left with a sense of hope, because I think we need hope, we need solutions. There is a lot of doom and gloom, and the only way forward is to have some sense of optimism and something that we can all do about it. And what is specifically next for you? What is the sort of next big thing for you?
Well, for me, it's always going to be travel. I'm always going to be going around the world telling stories. inspiring people, driving change.
I'm delighted to have the chance to catch up with you properly, and what an amazing setting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you
so much for having me.
Thank you. Cheers.